My grandfather's funeral should have been a day of mourning, but for my cousins, it was pure triumph. They stood near the casket with crocodile tears, but the moment the service ended, they swarmed the attorney's office, eager to find out just how fat their inheritance checks would be. "So, Lindsay," my cousin Brian whispered smugly, "wonder what Grandpa left you?" "A teacup set, maybe?" I took a deep breath and said nothing. The truth? I expected nothing. Grandpa and I had grown distant in recent years after a family blowout, and my cousins had seized the chance to worm their way into his good graces. They did everything to paint me as the ungrateful one, the outsider. Family dinners became ice-cold performances, and I was always the odd one out. When the lawyer started reading the will, the room fell dead silent. "All of my estate, including the house, savings, and stocks, goes to my grandchildren, Brian and Emily." Not a flicker of emotion crossed my face. Predictable. But then, the lawyer paused, clearing his throat. "However, there is a complication. A new will was filed after Mr. Richardson's passing, dated just 2 months before his death. It hasn't been fully processed yet, but—" Brian went pale. Emily nearly dropped her glass of water. "And me?" I smiled. Because I knew, this was just the beginning. The room froze. My cousin stared at the lawyer like he'd just doused them in ice water. What do you mean?" Emily finally snapped, trying to sound confident but her voice quivered. The lawyer held up the papers. "This new will was personally signed by your grandfather in front of witnesses. It details a new distribution of the estate. For now, we must proceed with the old document, but the legal review is underway." Brian clenched his jaw. "This is some kind of mistake. Grandpa would never change his will without telling us." I finally spoke up. "Are you really so sure about that, Brian? Because I remember a very interesting conversation." Their eyes shot to me, and I savored every second of their silence. "The truth? 2 months ago, Grandpa had called me out of the blue after years of no contact. He wanted to meet. We spent the whole day together, talking openly, for the first time in forever. He admitted he regretted the rift between us, and that he was deeply disappointed in Brian and Emily. 'I made a mistake, Lindsay. And I want to fix it,' he told me that day. A week later, he texted to say he'd updated his will. I told no one, just waited. And now? That patience was paying off in full." Emily lunged toward the lawyer. "We want to see that new document right now." But he shook his head calmly. "All in due process. It will take a few weeks." I smiled again. Because I knew, the best part was still coming. After the bombshell about the new will dropped, things took a dark turn, fast. My cousins, who had once been all smug grins and backhanded comments, now turned outright vicious. Within days, rumors started circulating among extended family that I had forged the document, manipulated Grandpa in his final days, even bribed witnesses. The irony? I'd done none of that. But that didn't stop them from sending me furious texts and thinly veiled threats. Brian, ever the drama king, texted one night. "You think you're clever? Enjoy it while it lasts. Our lawyer is going to tear your fake will apart." I just stared at my phone, shook my head, and put it down. Not worth my energy. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed again, this time, a message from Mrs. Whitmore, Grandpa's longtime attorney and the one handling the new will. "Lindsay, just wanted to reassure you, the new will is authentic. Your grandfather was of sound mind, and we have airtight documentation. Don't let them rattle you. These things take time, but justice is on your side." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It felt good to have that confirmation. Days turned into weeks, and while the legal wheels slowly turned, Brian and Emily ramped up their campaign of pressure. They started showing up at my workplace, accidentally bumping into me at my local grocery store, and making snide remarks within earshot of mutual acquaintances. One evening, Emily cornered me in the parking lot of my office. "Lindsay, just admit it's fake. Save yourself the embarrassment before this blows up in your face. I looked her dead in the eye, my keys clenched in my fist. You're nervous. I get it. But the truth? It's out of your hands now. She sneered and walked off, but I saw the flicker of doubt flash across her face. That tiny crack was all I needed. The next day, Mrs. Whitmore called again. Good news, she said warmly. We've cleared the first hurdle. The probate court has accepted the new will for formal validation. Now it's just a matter of time. I felt a wave of relief, but also something else, vindication. For years, I'd let my cousins paint me as the outsider, the black sheep. Now? The tables were turning. But it wasn't over yet. Not even close. That evening, as I sipped wine on my balcony, my phone buzzed again. Brian. A new message. You'll regret this. Watch your back. I smiled to myself, took another sip, and whispered, bring it. The next few weeks felt like a chess match, and my cousins were getting desperate. Brian and Emily, no longer content to rely on angry texts and glares, started assembling a legal team. Word got back to me through family friends that they'd hired a high-powered attorney known for breaking wills and overturning estate cases. Their new angle? To paint Grandpa as mentally unfit when he signed the updated document. One morning, Mrs. Whitmore called me, her voice tight. Lindsay, just a heads up, they've filed a formal objection. They're requesting medical records from the assisted living facility where your grandfather stayed during his final months. I sucked in a breath. Are they trying to claim he wasn't of sound mind? Exactly. But don't worry, we already have signed statements from his doctor and 2 staff witnesses who confirmed he was completely lucid when he updated the will. Still, this could slow things down. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. I knew my cousins would stoop low, but trying to erase Grandpa's clarity and autonomy? That was another level of disgusting. Later that week, I bumped into an old college friend, Jenna, who worked as a nurse at the same facility. Over coffee, I filled her in on everything. She shook her head in disbelief. I remember your grandfather, she said. Sharp as ever. Honestly, he was clearer than half the staff. If they need someone to testify, I'd be happy to help. It was like the universe had handed me a golden card. Meanwhile, Brian and Emily weren't letting up. They started dropping subtle threats on social media, cryptic posts like, some people think they're clever until the truth hits them like a brick. Or, karma's coming fast for the liars out there. It was childish. But I screenshot everything, just in case. At the same time, friends and even distant relatives started reaching out privately. Some offered support, others warned me to back down. Is this really worth tearing the family apart? One aunt texted. But here's the thing, the family had already torn itself apart years ago. I was just finally standing up for myself. By the end of the month, Mrs. Whitmore confirmed the date for a formal hearing. This is it, Lindsay. Be ready. Their lawyer is aggressive, but the facts are on our side. I stared at the calendar, circled the date in bold red, and whispered to myself, let's finish this. But little did I know, my cousins had one more dirty trick up their sleeves. The hearing date was creeping closer, and the pressure was mounting. But instead of focusing solely on the legal fight, my cousins decided to hit below the belt. I got the first hint of their next move when my manager called me into her office one Monday morning. Lindsay, I just wanted to check in. We received some concerning emails about you. My stomach sank. From who? Anonymous, of course, she said, rolling her eyes. Claiming you're involved in legal troubles, that you forged documents, and that your ethics are questionable. Honestly, it sounds like nonsense, but HR needs to document it. I sat there, jaw clenched, forcing myself to breathe. Brian and Emily were now trying to sabotage my career? This was war. Later that day, I received a text from Brian, dripping with faux innocence. Tough day at work? Hope everything's okay, winking face. I didn't reply. Let him think he was winning. That evening, Mrs. Whitmore and I had a long call to finalize preparations. I heard about the smear campaign, she said, sounding disgusted. Stay calm. In court, facts matter, not gossip. We had everything lined up. Grandpa's doctor was ready to testify, the 2 facility staffers were on board, and Jenna, my college friend, had officially signed her affidavit. This case is solid, Mrs. Whitmore reassured me. Their only play now is to rattle you emotionally. Well, they were certainly trying. Midweek, Emily sent me a message out of nowhere. It's not too late to walk away, Lindsay. Save yourself the embarrassment. We both know Grandpa loved us more. I stared at her words, shaking my head. That old song again. But just when I thought their tactics couldn't get worse, I received a letter, hand-delivered to my apartment. It was from Brian's lawyer, a threat of a countersuit for emotional distress and defamation, demanding I drop my claims immediately. I laughed out loud. The desperation was showing through every word of that letter. I sent it straight to Mrs. Whitmore, who replied instantly. Empty threats. Pure intimidation. We're not backing down. By Friday, everything was ready. The documents, the witness list, the strategy. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror that night, looking myself dead in the eye. You've come too far to back down now, I whispered. Let's finish this. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't let it go without one final blow. The day of the hearing finally arrived. I stood outside the courthouse, staring up at the building, breathing in deep, slow breaths. This was it. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with quiet tension. Brian and Emily sat at their table, flanked by their high-powered attorney, a man who looked like he thrived on intimidation. They avoided my gaze, their faces stone-cold masks. But I could see the tension in Emily's clenched jaw, the way Brian's leg bounced under the table. Mrs. Whitmore sat beside me, calm and composed, papers neatly organized in front of her. Just stay steady, Lindsay, she whispered. We've got this. The judge entered, and proceedings began. Their lawyer was up first, loud, aggressive, tossing out accusations left and right. Your Honor, this so-called new will is clearly suspect. My clients had a long-standing relationship with their grandfather. Suddenly, just weeks before his death, this new document appears, conveniently favoring the estranged granddaughter? We question its validity and the mental fitness of the decedent. I felt my stomach twist but kept my face neutral. Mrs. Whitmore rose, her voice calm but razor-sharp. Your Honor, we have extensive documentation proving Mr. Richardson was of sound mind at the time. We will present medical testimony, witness statements, and expert verification of the will's authenticity. Then the witnesses began. First up was Grandpa's physician, a measured, precise man who confirmed under oath that Grandpa was mentally sharp when he updated his will. I saw no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever, he stated confidently. Next were the 2 staff members from the facility, each echoing the same truth: Grandpa had been clear, determined, and fully aware of his decisions. Finally, Jenna, my friend, took the stand. Seeing her there, calm and professional in her scrubs, made my heart swell. I interacted with Mr. Richardson daily, she testified. He spoke often about wanting to reconcile with his granddaughter and was very deliberate in telling me he planned to change his will to reflect his true wishes. Brian's lawyer tried to rattle her with rapid-fire questions, but Jenna held firm. She didn't flinch once. Watching my cousin squirm was almost surreal. Emily whispered furiously to Brian, their facade cracking bit by bit. When it was our turn to submit the final pieces of evidence, Grandpa's video message to me explaining his decision, the room went completely still. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing, as the video played. Lindsay, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone. I want you to know, I never stopped loving you, and I'm proud of the woman you've become. This new will reflects my true wishes. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. My eyes welled up, but I stayed steady. When the hearing adjourned for the day, Mrs. Whitmore turned to me, her expression unreadable. We presented a bulletproof case, she said. Now we wait for the ruling. I exhaled, exhausted but strangely exhilarated. Walking out of the courthouse, I glanced back at Brian and Emily, who looked like they'd just been hit by a truck. I smiled. Whatever happened next, I knew I'd fought with everything I had. After the hearing, it felt like the entire world had pressed pause. The judge informed us that a decision would be issued within 30 days, a lifetime when you're waiting on a verdict that could change everything. I threw myself into work, trying to keep my mind occupied. But no matter how busy I stayed, that gnawing tension was always there, just beneath the surface. A week after the hearing, my phone buzzed with an unexpected message, from Emily. "Let's talk," it read. "We don't have to drag this out." I stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. "Nothing to discuss. The court will decide." An hour later, Brian called. I let it go to voicemail, but he didn't disappoint. "Lindsay, come on. This whole thing is a mess. Why don't we work something out? We'll cut you in, say, 10% of the estate. That's fair, right?" I almost laughed. After months of insults, threats, and smear campaigns, now they wanted to make a deal? I didn't bother responding. That evening, Mrs. Whitmore called. "I figured they might try to settle," she said dryly when I told her. "It's a sign they know their case is weak. But it's your decision, do you want to consider it?" I shook my head even though she couldn't see me. "No way. This isn't about money anymore. It's about standing up for what's right." "Good," she replied, satisfaction in her voice. "Because our case is solid. But remember, judges can be unpredictable. Stay prepared for anything." The next 2 weeks crawled by. Every time my phone buzzed with a new email, my heart skipped a beat. Every letter in the mail felt like it might be the decision. One Saturday, I met Jenna for coffee. She squeezed my hand across the table. "You know," she said gently, "no matter what happens, you should be proud. You stood your ground. Most people wouldn't have the guts." Her words landed deep. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe, really breathe, and feel a flicker of peace. But peace was fleeting. A few days later, another envelope arrived, this one from Brian and Emily's lawyer, marked urgent. Inside? Yet another last-ditch attempt to intimidate me. A formal letter threatening to sue me for legal harassment if I didn't drop my case immediately. I forwarded it to Mrs. Whitmore with a simple caption, "Nice try face with tears of joy." Her reply came fast. "Ignore it. Desperate people act desperately when they know they're losing." She was right. I could feel it in my bones, we were close. So close. Now, all I had to do was wait. 3 weeks after the hearing, it finally happened, a crisp, official letter from the court arrived in my mailbox. I stood there on my porch, heart pounding as I read. "The final ruling in the case of Richardson Estate will be announced on, date, 10 a.m. sharp." It was real. A date. A time. Closure was finally within reach. That night, sleep was impossible. My mind spiraled through every scenario, winning, losing, a hung decision. I replayed the hearing in my head, over and over, clinging to every solid point our side had made. Brian and Emily, unsurprisingly, didn't take the news quietly. Within hours of the announcement, my phone blew up with messages, not from them directly this time, but from various aunts, uncles, and even family friends. "Lindsay, do you really have to keep pushing this? You know your grandfather loved all his grandkids, why are you trying to divide the family? Be the bigger person and let it go." It was exhausting. I didn't reply to a single one. My favorite came from Aunt Sylvia, who'd always played the peacemaker. "Honey, don't you think Grandpa would want everyone to get along?" I stared at that message for a long time before finally responding. He also wanted his wishes respected. That's what I'm doing. The day before the ruling, Mrs. Whitmore and I met in person for the first time in weeks. We sat across from each other at her polished office table, the weight of the past months hanging between us. You ready for tomorrow? She asked, folding her hands. I hesitated. As ready as I'll ever be. What do you think? Honest answer. She smiled gently. I think we built an airtight case. I also think, win or lose, you've already won something more important. You stood up for yourself. And tomorrow, you'll walk out of that courtroom with your head high no matter what. Her words hit me harder than I expected. We shook hands as I left. See you at 10, she said. That night, I sat alone on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker. I thought about Grandpa, his smile, his laugh, his stubborn pride. I whispered into the dark, hope you're watching. Tomorrow's for you. And for me. The morning of the ruling felt surreal. I walked into the courthouse, every sound amplified, the echo of my heels, the murmur of voices, the shuffle of papers. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. Brian and Emily were already there when I arrived, seated stiffly at their table. Brian kept glancing around the room nervously, while Emily flipped through her phone, her hand shaking just enough to give her away. Mrs. Whitmore leaned over to me and whispered. No matter what happens, you've handled yourself with dignity. That counts. The judge entered, and everyone rose. The room fell dead silent as he settled in, adjusted his glasses, and began reading. In the matter of the Richardson estate. I gripped the edge of the table, holding my breath. After reviewing all evidence, testimonies, and submissions from both parties, the court finds the updated will dated date to be valid and legally binding. The estate will be distributed as per the instructions in the revised document. It was done. There was a heartbeat of silence before Emily gasped, "What?" Her voice sharp and panicked. Brian stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. This is a mistake. We'll appeal. The judge raised a hand, unbothered. You are within your rights to appeal, but this ruling stands unless overturned by a higher court. Mrs. Whitmore placed a calming hand on my arm. I sat there, frozen for a second, then slowly exhaled. I had won. Brian and Emily stormed out of the room, muttering to each other, their faces red and tight with rage. I didn't watch them leave. Instead, I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of it all settle. Mrs. Whitmore smiled warmly. You did it, Lindsay. Outside the courthouse, the sun was bright, almost too bright, as if the universe itself was offering a nod of approval. I pulled out my phone, opened Grandpa's last video message, and watched his face smile at me one more time. Thank you, I whispered. For everything. But deep down, I knew, this wasn't just his victory. It was mine too. In the days following the ruling, everything felt strangely quiet. No more frantic texts, no more threatening letters, just silence. Brian and Emily must have realized their battle was over, though I heard whispers from distant relatives that they were outraged and still plotting some sort of revenge. Let them. I wasn't worried anymore. A week later, I received the official paperwork. The estate was legally transferred to my name. Standing in my living room, holding those documents, I felt a wave of emotions, relief, pride, even sadness. Grandpa should have been here to see it. But instead of dwelling on the what-ifs, I made a choice. I met with Mrs. Whitmore and explained my plan. I want to set aside a portion of the inheritance to start a foundation in Grandpa's name, I told her. Something that helps people who've been manipulated or financially abused by their own families. That's what he would have wanted. Her eyes lit up. That's beautiful, Lindsay. A powerful legacy. As the weeks passed, I slowly put my life back together. The constant anxiety that had gripped me for months finally began to fade. Friends invited me out again. I started sleeping soundly for the first time in ages. One evening, I received a voicemail from Aunt Sylvia. Lindsay, I just wanted to say, maybe we were too hard on you. I hope, in time, you'll forgive the family. I listened to it twice, then deleted it without replying. Some things didn't deserve an answer. A few months later, standing in front of the new office of the Richardson Foundation, I smiled. The sign gleamed in the sunlight, a testament to everything I'd fought for, not just the money, but my own worth, my voice. Grandpa's last words to me echoed in my mind. Don't let anyone tell you who you are. I never would again. As I locked the door and walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years. This chapter was closed, and I was finally free.